the screen. Any of you please tell me, am I audible and can you see the screen?
Yes, sir, you're audible and we can
see. Okay. And the screen is changing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So before starting, can you just explain the assignment?
I have not yet given any assignment. You just wait. I'll today discuss. I am not, because many students many PhD students are joining late. I did not give the assignment last week. I delayed it by a week. So today I'll discuss the assignment. Okay. So today, we'll continue on our study of conditional models, where a system or an event has two sets of variable x and y, and we have an observation about x, and we want to predict the value of y for a given value of x. So this is why and not only we want to predict a single value, we want to find a confidence of the predicted value, or in other words, we want to find which predicted values are more likely than others. We want to find a probability distribution P y given x. We have studied the linear models, the regression models, and also the logistic regression model. We will still study regression, but by a different technique known as the Gaussian process. The advantage of this technique over linear regression is that it allows nonlinear regression. It allows nonlinear functions to be fit. Okay, so let us start. So what I'll do is that I'll first explain an mathematical object known as a Gaussian process, and then see how you can use this Gaussian process to do nonlinear regression. And finally, maybe it will spill over to Wednesday's class. We'll see that how do I tune different parameters, how do I choose different parameters of the Gaussian process. So let us start with the plain old simple Gaussian regression, Gaussian distribution, multivariate Gaussian distribution. So for example, here I have a two-dimensional Gaussian distribution on variables y1 and y2. So for simplicity, let us assume that the mean of y1 and y2, that is the mu of this distribution, is at 0. So and there is some variance, some covariance term. So as you know that if the covariance term is sigma, we know that y given sigma, where y is a vector y1, y2, is proportional to e to the power minus half. Since it is mean is 0, it is y transpose sigma inverse y. And this what I have plotted is that actually it is in the z axis, the probability values. I have sort of taken isoprobability contours, and these are what the contours look like. And if you actually look at the shape of the contour, the diagonal terms of the covariance matrix will determine the dispersion along y1 and dispersion along y2, whereas these cross diagonal terms, which are very important here, is kind of the correlation between y1 and y2. Correlation between y1 and y2. If this is high, say for example 0.95, this would look more like an elongated ellipse, more like a straight line with some fudge around it. Whereas this is close to say 0 or say 0.1, this ellipse would be more like a circle. There will be almost no correlation between y1 and y2. And what we have done, okay, people who are not speaking, can you mute yourself? There is some background noise coming. If you can mute, maybe it will be better. So these are the isocontour plots, and we can draw some samples out of this distribution. So samples mean if we follow this distribution, and randomly draw values of y1, y2, you would get points, set of points like this. They will be more closer to the mean and less around the boundary. All right, so now this is a two-dimensional or a bivariate Gaussian. In general, we can have higher dimensional Gaussian, say y1, y2 up to yn. So visualizing such higher dimensional Gaussians might be difficult. So one of the way of visualizing this suggested by, I think not Kevin Murphy, I think David Mackay, is something like this. So what we do is that, so this is another Gaussian you can see with variance 1,1 and covariance 0.9. So this is a very elongated ellipse, very narrow and elongated ellipse. So what we do is that for every sample that I get here, this dot, and the x-axis I tick mark or I plot the variable indices. So y1, y2. So if there are capital D number of variables, y1, y2, yd, this should be capital D number of points in the x-axis. This is the variable number. It is a vector, so it is just the component number of the vector. And along the y-axis, I plot for this particular sample, I plot the value of that variable. So here, this used to be, sorry, this is y1. So this sample, if I took, this is the value of the y1 component that I plot. Similarly, y2 component that I plot. Right. If there are more components, y3, y4, I will plot them like this as points. So in effect, I will sort of get a set of lines, set of points, as many points as the number of variables, the dimension of the data. So many points I get. And what I do is that I join these 2 points by a straight line. So given this distribution, now what I can do is that I can now take a different sample, draw a different sample. If I draw a different sample, both y1 and y2 value will change, and then this bar kind of thing, this will also change. Okay, so let us see. So this is this particular. I'm dropping these vertical lines. I'm just plotting this connecting line. This is for this sample. If I move the sample, it changes like this. If I move the sample, it changes like this. Okay, if I move the sample, it changes like this. So as if I can study how the sample, as the sample moves, because you draw a sample, it will not be exactly in the same point, it will be in some other point. As we keep on drawing sample, how does this change? And we are trying to visualize, or we are trying to somehow make sense of this underlying bivariate normal distribution from how this ogles or change. It will sort of move around, how it changes. Okay, so just we are seeing how it moves around. We can do one more thing also. We can do kind of conditional. That means one of the variable, let's say y1, I don't allow it to move, and I fix its value, let's say to y1 equal to 1. I fix the value of y1 equal to 1. I marked it by red. And then I draw, hello? Yeah, please. Okay. So I fix the value of y1, and then I draw different samples such that the value of y1 component is clipped to 1, the y2 can change. So if I do that, you know that I have already discussed before that if this conditional, if y1 is 1 and how does y2 change, that is also another univariate Gaussian. That is a univariate Gaussian like this, and the value of y2 will just change between this Gaussian. Different samples will be changing inside this Gaussian. Okay, so way of visualizing this is as if this end is fixed and the other end kind of moves around. other end kind of moves around, right? So this is the visualization of the conditional. Now let us extend to,
Hello, sir.
yes.
So, sir, sorry to interrupt, sir, but the right side graph, once again, can you explain what that denotes?
This graph, okay.
The variable index.
Yes, yes. So what I'm doing is that in the x-axis, I'm plotting the index number. That is the first coordinate, the second coordinate number. Which coordinate number I'll plot. So if there are d number of dimensions, there will be d points like this. And for a given sample, I plot along the y-axis the value of component 1, that is y1, the value of component 2, that is y2. So this first height is nothing but this line, the value of y1 for this sample, and the next is the value of this line. It is the value of y2 for this sample. Okay, and I join them by a line. So as I draw different samples and they move along in this space, this line segment with points in two ends, they keep on moving around. So that's what I plotted. They are keeping on moving around as we change the sample. Now what I do is that I fix the y1 component to a particular value, let's say 1. And now I see all the samples in which y1 equal to 1 and y2 may vary, how do they change? Earlier we have worked out that if the entire thing is a bivariate Gaussian, and if y1 is fixed, and then the conditional y2 given y1 equal to 1 will vary like a Gaussian with this mean and this much variance. So that's what we visualize here. We fix one of the variables, say y1, and move around the samples. We'll see that this bar will move like this, with one end fixed. Is it clear?
Yeah, yes.
Is it? Okay. So now what I do is that I extend this beyond bivariate. Okay. So for example, in this case, I have a 5-dimensional normal distribution. So I cannot plot it here. I have just plotted, say, y1 to y5, y1 against y5, but there are y2, y3, and so on. So what I have done is that to represent a sample, one point in this 5-dimensional space, I have plotted the values of each of the dimensions in the above fashion. So I have 5 points here and I have 5 values. So every point in this 5-dimension is kind of piecewise linear curve in 2 dimensions. Every point in this 5-dimensional space is a curve or a function in this 2-dimensional space. Okay, so again, this has no mathematical sense. It is just a visualization. It's only for the purpose of visualization, nothing else. And we get no mathematical advantage by doing this except for visualization. Okay, so what I do is that, so the point is that a 5-dimensional point, a 5-dimensional sample drawn according to a 5-dimensional Gaussian distribution is nothing but a curve. If the x-axis is the dimension number and y-axis is the value of that dimension in the 5-dimensional point. So this is a curve. Okay, and since this is a 5-dimensional point, this Gaussian would be a 5-dimensional Gaussian. Its mean would be some vector. Let's say the mean is still the 0 vector, but the covariance matrix will be a 5 by 5 matrix. Okay, and the diagonal elements will be the spread along each of the parallel to each of the axis, whereas the off diagonal would be the correlation. So you can see the values which are highly correlated, say this 0.9, that means variable 1 and variable 2 are highly correlated. They are 0.9. So these two will move together. The first point and the second point, as we move the samples, this curve will change. This curve will kind of oscillate, but these two will move together. Whereas if they are not correlated, say for example, this 0.4 versus say variable 1 against variable 5, 0.4 versus 0.4, 0.4 is the correlation, variable 1 and variable 5, they will not move together, they'll move independent of each other as we vary the sample. Okay, so now let me see what I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about is this is the curve for a single sample. Now if I change my sample, I draw a different sample, this curve will change. So as the sample moves along, this curve kind of changes. This curve kind of changes its shape to different curves. But we can tell something about how this change of shape will happen from this covariance matrix. If the covariance is high, these 2 points would almost be moving together. If y1 is high, y2 will also be high because they are correlated. Whereas if they are not correlated, for example, y1 and y5, they will not be in the same height. They will move differently. Okay, so basically 2 points to be noted. One point is that multivariate Gaussian can be represented as a curve. Second is the shape of the curve depends on the covariance matrix of the underlying multivariate Gaussian. Okay, which 2 points will move together, which 2 points will move separately, it depends on that. And we can do the same conditional thing here also. We can, for example, fix value of y1 to 1. Then if we move the curve, one of the values is fixed and the other thing changes. Other points changes. Any queries so far? No. Okay. So now I extend it to beyond 5 variables also. Let's say I have a 20 variable distribution. Have a 20 variable distribution. All right. So then this curve becomes less of a piecewise linear curve, more of a real curve kind of thing. More of a real curve kind of thing. The x-axis is the variable index, y-axis is the thing. And this covariance matrix, because I have 20 variables, it will really be 20 by 20. So what I am doing is that this will help you to understand something later. Is that instead of writing down the values 1.9 and such things, I am color coding the values. So a very red kind of value is a high value, say 0.1, whereas a very deep blue kind of value is a small value, let's say 0. And so this particular shape, this particular visual or this kind of color distribution in the covariance matrix tells of something. This kind of band in the diagonal and blue along the corners, they can be interpreted in a particular way. This means is that say diagonal is the spread along y1, spread along y2, spread along y3, spread along y20. That is the diagonal values. Whereas the off-diagonal values are the correlation between y1, y2, y1, y3, all pair, y1, y20, y19, y17, all pair correlation, the off-diagonal values. If this color is concentrated towards the diagonal, that means y1, y2 is highly correlated, whereas y1, y20 is not so correlated. y2, y3 is highly correlated, y2, y20 is not so much correlated. y19, y20 is highly correlated, y20, y2 is not very correlated. That means two points which are close, whose index are close, y19, y20, y1, y2, between them there is a local correlation between the variables, whereas y20 is not so much correlated with y1. There is a local correlation only. Right. Hypothetically, this need not be the real. Suppose it is like this. So this is a particular case of an covariance matrix. The covariance matrix could have been something else, and the shape of this curve would change. Okay. So for this particular case, it looks like this. That means locally they are smooth. They vary together. There is no abrupt change between y19 and y20. Whereas there is a big change between y2 and y20. Okay, that's what this matrix is. This covariance matrix is, and that's what we look like. All right, now let us extend this even further. Suppose I have an infinite dimensional Gaussian distribution. I have an infinite dimensional Gaussian distribution. That means there are infinite indices. So this point should be really, really close. Okay. If that is so, then this infinite dimensional distribution, I have already said, this is just a visual two-dimensional visualization of a very high dimensional Gaussian distribution. If it is very, very high dimensional, if it is infinite dimensional, then the visualization is just a continuous function. It's not this jerky piecewise linear kind of thing. It's a very smooth convolutional function. In other words, infinite dimensional Gaussian distributions can be viewed as functions, not one function, a bunch of. Why? Because see, this particular function is one of the sample drawn from this distribution. If you draw another sample, this is another curve. If you draw another sample, this is another curve. Okay, another sample, another curve. So suppose we keep on sampling from this infinite dimensional distribution, you get a collection of curves. You get a band of curves. Let's say number of curves which change like this. Why I say band? Because some values are very, very less likely. Like say some sample here, no sample is likely to come. So this curve, some weird very distant curve is not very likely. So more or less the curve are close together, but they are a band. They are a collection of curves. So a high dimensional infinite dimensional Gaussian distribution can be visualized, can be corresponding to a band, a set of curves or functions, a set of curves or functions, or rather we would call it a function space of functions, a collection of functions. Okay, so infinite dimensional Gaussians can be represented by a collection of functions. So instead of, see, this is a distribution over points. This point is so much likely, this point is so much likely, this point is so much likely, this point is. So what does the distribution do? You pick a point, you read along the z-axis, is give you the probability value, a likelihood value. Okay, so this is a distribution over points. I am converting a distribution over points to a distribution over curves or functions. Okay, so I am converting a distribution over infinite dimensional points to a distribution over functions. To a distribution over, in this case, one-dimensional function. There is only one independent variable. Okay, to a distribution of a one-dimensional distribution over function. This function is more likely. This is the probability of getting this function. Another function, this is the probability of getting. These functions are more likely. Some distance function is very less likely. It's a distribution over functions. Okay, so that's what I have done. Okay, I have converted a infinite dimensional distribution to a distribution over functions. This process, is a very common process in probability theory. Converting a distribution to a function is a very common process in probability theory. Okay, so this is more such functions, and you can also have a conditional. So this is what I was saying. So if we take to be Gaussian distribution, then I would get a function, not one function, I'll get a bunch of functions, and the average of all these functions would be this mu star function, average of all these functions. So every point you take the average of all these functions. These are the possible functions. These are the possible functions. So okay, I take the average of these functions, and the variance of this function at this particular point I draw by this blue bar. We call it as a sigma star. Okay, so my possible functions can be the mean function, can be little more different from the mean function. Anything within this band, it can be any of these functions. And each of these functions now have a probability, which I can derive from the expression for the original Gaussian, from the parameters of the, from the sigma of the original underlying Gaussian distribution, which I can derive. We'll soon see. We can derive that. Okay, but it is a distribution over these functions where each function has a probability value. Okay, so such a distribution over the, and also it may be possible that, okay, at some points, that's what the conditional, I have fixed value of some dimensions. Okay, so these points are fixed to vary. So basically, this represents a distribution over the function space. In probability theory term, a distribution over a function space as opposed to a distribution over a point, set of points, is called a stochastic process. So the stochastic process is also a distribution, but not a distribution over points. It is a distribution over functions. We attach likelihood to functions. And I have already shown there is a correspondence. Okay, so there is another way of, this is one way of speaking about stochastic process. I have already shown that the equivalent ways you can think of stochastic process as a distribution over infinite dimensional vectors. They are equivalent. And any sample, okay, let me say this GP is something called a Gaussian process. It is a particular case of a stochastic process, and I'll soon explain what it is. And any sample out of this distribution over functions are individual functions, are a so-called random function. They are so-called random functions. Okay, so these are some examples drawn from this random function. So this is in general the definition of stochastic process. Now let us define what is a Gaussian process. See, the only difference between a normal multivariate distribution and a stochastic process is the following. In a normal multivariate distribution, it is a point, and so you can think of it is not just a high dimensional vector, but there is a index value of these variates. So index 1, variable number 1, variable number 2, variable number 3, variable number 4. There is a index associated with these dimensions. In the earlier case, when I was talking about bivariate distribution, I was not attaching so much importance to whether it is y1 or y2. I was not attaching much importance to the indices. But now it is necessary to have an index associated with this infinite dimensional vector. There has to be an index for each element of this infinite dimensional vector. As it turns out, often this index has some meaning. Index has some meaning means if two index values are close, physically also there is some similarity between these two. So often this index takes the form of, say, time. Say the observation at time equal to 1, time equal to 2, time equal to 3, or say distance. So basically you take any independent variable and there is an ordering of this independent variable, and this, so time, there is ordering. Space, distance, there is ordering. This distance is more, this distance is less, there is ordering. So there is a ordered index over the infinite dimensional vector. Often this ordered index has a physical meaning. It is a time or distance or say even location. This can be higher dimensional. X can in general be higher dimensional. I have drawn it for two-dimensional functions. I can as well draw it for higher dimensional. So this curve will be like kind of a three-dimensional variation. This X can be again two-dimensional. Okay, two indices I can have. Say example, location, latitude, longitude. Two indices I can have. Okay, then this curve will be still a function space, but a two-dimensional function space. Say, how does temperature vary over the Earth's surface? Okay, so there has to be an index value associated with the x. Sometimes this x is called the field of the stochastic process. This index thing is called a field. It can be time, it can be space, and sometimes this is also called a random field. That's why. All right. So coming back to Gaussian processes, a Gaussian process is a particular example of a stochastic process with certain properties. So in general, intuitively, it is an extension, it is a generalization of the multivariate Gaussian distribution to infinitely many variables. All right. So now, see, so we say that it is an infinite dimensional Gaussian distribution over x1, x2 up to x infinity. And then there is some index over this x1, x2. Now I will call this infinite dimensional random variable x to be following a Gaussian process. If you take any subset of the variables, say x1, x2, x20, x1, x2, x20, or say x5, x6, or say just x1. If you take any subset of this x1 to x infinity and look at the distribution, so that is a random vector, x1, x2, x5, let's say it's a random vector. Each of this random vector, whatever subset you take of the indices, each of these random vectors would themselves be Gaussians. Okay. So, in other words, I said that it is a distribution over functions. You take this, so you can imagine it as a bunch of functions, this function, this function, this function with some likelihood. So I will call such a bunch of function as a Gaussian process if, I'll call such a bunch of function as a Gaussian process if you pick up some points along the function. You pick up some points, you sample some points, say this point I pick up, this point I pick up, this point I pick up. Any finite number of points I pick up, so there will be a vector. And I look at all these values. So this point can have this value, x1 equal to, I can have this value, this value, this value, this value over this range. This function can have this value, this value, this point can have this value, this value, this value, this point can have this value, this value, this value. So this three-dimensional vector can have this, all this combination of these values. So all these random realizations of this random vector you can have. If for any such sample you draw, any such points you pick up from this curve and look at their realizations, look at their samplings. If they follow a multivariate Gaussian, they should follow a multivariate Gaussian. That means you pick up any sets of point, you pick up any 3 point, any 4 point, any 5 point from this curve, look at their y value, take their collection, they should be Gaussian. They should be Gaussian for all such samplings. For all such samplings, they should be Gaussian. If that is so, if that is a very critical condition, you see, it is a exhaustive kind of thing. You have to prove that any combination you take, any samples you take, they have to be Gaussian. If that is so, then this collection of curves would be called a Gaussian process. Right? So let me clearly tell again. So I usually represent a Gaussian process by f. Okay, so this entire curve I call f. F1 up till f1, f2 till fn are the points along the n points on this curve. Not on this curve actually, on this bunch of curves. There are n points on this bunch of curves. And this set of n points, you can consider them as a random vector. This random vector is Gaussian according to some mean mu and variance sigma. If this is so for any f1 to fn lying on these curves, set of curves, only then this set of curve would be called a Gaussian process. Right. So so what this actually means, we'll soon see why. This actually means that any single point, that entire thing will be true if and only if you look at a single point on this curve and look at the variation. You look at a single point on the curve and look at the variation. This would be kind of a Gaussian distribution. So let me try to draw it. If you look at this, pardon my bad drawing. If we look at a single point x and look at all possible values of x along the in the bunch of curves, then this set of points would be Gaussian distributed. I'm drawing very crudely because all this will be straight line, and this should hold for every single. This should hold for every single x. This should hold. So basically, at each and every point, I have Gaussians. The Gaussians have less variance when we have more data point and more variance in other places. So I have set of Gaussians at every point, like this. We can easily show that this property, that it will, any sample will be a jointly there will be a Gaussian distribution. This will be true only which at every single point it will be a Gaussian distribution. All right. So what I do is that, so as I have said, every single point will be a Gaussian distribution. I say that for a point x, the mean of this Gaussian I called mx. And the variance of this Gaussian, I am putting two values. I'll call x and x prime. I'll explain why it is. So this is the mean. And the variance will be something proportional to k, not exactly k. I'll explain what it is. So at every point, I'll have some k, which I call a kernel function. And I have a mean function, mx, and a kernel function, x prime. So this x prime is kind of, it is at x, and this x prime can be other indices. X prime can be other indices, right? And the variance of this Gaussian at x, at every point it is a Gaussian, is proportional to this k. What kind of proportional? I'll explain, I'll derive. And you have a mean mx. All right. So as if it is a Gaussian distribution which is changing with x. The mean is changing according to mx. The variance is changing proportional to some kernel function kx x prime. The kernel function is a scalar value. This value changes with x again. So we call fx, this set of functions I call fx, to be distributed, to be a Gaussian process with two parameters. A Gaussian process has two parameters, the mean function and the kernel function, x prime. Or the kernel function is very much related to the covariance function, x prime. A Gaussian, you know, has two parameters, the mean and the Gaussian variance. So this thing, so in summary, a Gaussian process is nothing but a distribution over functions such that if you sample the function at a single point, it will be a Gaussian. You take the sample at multiple n number of points, take this random vector would also be a Gaussian. Okay, for all such samplings of any size, it will also be a Gaussian. And it has two parameters, the mean function mx and the kernel function kx x prime. So this is a algebraic way of saying what I say. That so if we pick up n samples, this vector f of x1, f of this is x1, x2 lying along the x-axis, lying along the x-axis. And if we take these values, that is read the y-axis values, f of x1, f of x2, f of xn, this vector would be a normal distribution with mean, okay, this should have been mx1, mx2, mxn, and a covariance matrix like this. See, it is a n-dimensional vector, so covariance matrix will be n cross n. What is the covariance matrix? The first entry of the covariance matrix will be the kernel function applied on x1, x1, the first itself. Similarly, the nth diagonal will be xn, xn. The off-diagonal terms, the ijth off-diagonal will be kxi, k of xi, xj. Okay, you sample n points, take the ith point, take the jth point, compute the kernel function kxi, xj. I have not yet specified. I'll give examples of kernel function. You take kxi, xj, fill up this matrix, and you from the mx1 function you compute this mean vector. Now you get a big Gaussian with this mean vector and this covariance matrix, and f of x1, f of x2, which is the y-axis. You try to imagine in your mind the y-axis of the curve, x1, x2 at the x-axis. The y-axis would be distributed normal with this mean, this variance. So we introduce some notations which we will use later. This f of x1 to f of xn, this vector we call bold f. Mu x1 or mx1 to mxn we call bold mu. And this covariance matrix computed using the kernel function I call as bold k. So f, bold f, is distributed according to normal with mean bold mu and covariance bold k. Okay, so this is the concise, precise mathematical definition. Intuitively, it is a distribution over functions. You take any sample over the functions, jointly they are a Gaussian. Okay, so why are we so interested in such a distribution over function space? Why Gaussian? Why are you interested? Because of some advantageous properties of the Gaussians, which we'll exploit soon. The advantageous properties are, if you take two Gaussian distribution, add them up, you still get a Gaussian. Why this is important? We'll see later that when we add up things, we'll soon in the joint distribution we'll add up things, you still get a Gaussian. Product of two Gaussian is a Gaussian because of the exponential form, e to the power something form. Why? So this is basically the conjugacy we talked about so much, conjugacy of two distributions. Why this is important? Because in the Bayes rule, we'll multiply the likelihood with the prior. Scaling of a Gaussian or normalization of a Gaussian is a Gaussian. This again in the Bayes rule, in the denominator will have a normalizing factor. All right, so that is also a Gaussian. And there are some more properties. If you have two variables a and b, if p joint distribution of a and b, p a comma b is a Gaussian, then so are their marginals individually p and p, and so are their so that means p of a given b, they are all, this will use in while you do prediction. They are also Gaussians. So all these properties makes the Gaussian process a very attractive mathematical object. Very, of course, in the first place, they are Gaussian or not, that is a purely an assumption. But if they are Gaussian, all these operations are simplified. But in the first place, they are Gaussian or not, that is again purely an assumption. As it turns out, this is an extremely good assumption. most of processes of nature are Gaussians. This is an extremely good observation. And also there is a central limit theorem. Even if there are a lot of processes which are not Gaussian, distributions which are not Gaussian, if the final outcome is a superposition or addition of all these individual distribution, you know, whatever distribution you take, if you take the sum of is this, say a Dirichlet plus a multinomial plus a Bernoulli, if you add up lot of distribution, lot of distribution asymptotically, the sum is always a Gaussian. The central limit theorem says that. So it's not just sum of Gaussians is a Gaussian. Sum of any distributions, if they are sufficiently large in number, is also a Gaussian. So they are abundant in nature. That's why we are often successful in making this as well. But they have also this very nice property because of the algebraic form. All right. So I think this is about the definition of what is mathematically a Gaussian process. Maybe I think today let us not go into it. What we'll do in the next class, we'll exploit all these properties of the Gaussian process, and we will do nonlinear regression using this Gaussian process. And we will see that Gaussian processes are an excellent tool for nonlinear regression, solving nonlinear regression problem. Okay, so I'll stop for today. I'll stop. I need to do some derivation for the regression, but better not start today. And if you have any questions, I can take. In the Wednesday class, after I finish the Gaussian, I'll give a programming assignment on this Gaussian processes. I delayed it by a week because many PhD students, they have just joined. Let them, many have not yet joined also. Let them follow up, then I'll do it. Any questions?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I am also a newly joined PhD student, so I don't have a track whether